The smell of burning bread yanked Lily Fairmont from her daydream about anything other than the suffocating heat of the bakery on that scorching Arizona afternoon in July of 1882. And she knew before she even opened the oven door that her father would have words about this batch. She grabbed the wooden paddle and pulled out 6 loaves that looked more like charcoal than sustenance, their crusts blackened beyond recognition, smoke curling up toward the ceiling in lazy spirals. Her father had left her in charge while he made deliveries to the general store, trusting her to manage the afternoon baking. This was the 3rd time this month she had let her mind wander too far, and she knew his patience was wearing thin. Lily set the ruined loaves on the cooling rack and opened the back door to let the smoke escape into the dry Wilcox air. The town had grown considerably in the past year since the railroad came through, bringing prospectors, ranchers, and drifters from all corners of the country. Her father's bakery had become a staple of the small community, known for providing fresh bread to the miners and cowboys who worked the surrounding lands. At 22 years old, Lily had spent most of her life covered in flour, kneading dough before dawn and sweeping the bakery floors until her back ached. Her mother had died when she was just a child, leaving her father to raise her alone while running the business. She loved him dearly, but lately she had begun to feel the weight of a life that seemed predetermined, mapped out in endless repetitions of the same tasks, the same conversations, the same predictable days. She stared at the burned loaves and considered throwing them out back where the pigs from the neighboring property might make use of them. But something stopped her. They had been struggling lately, with ingredient costs rising and her father's arthritis making it harder for him to work the long hours required. Wasting 6 loaves seemed unconscionable, even if they were badly burned. The front door bell chimed, and Lily quickly wiped her hands on her apron, trying to compose herself before facing a customer. She pushed through the curtain that separated the kitchen from the front of the shop and found herself looking at a man she had never seen before. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that seemed to fill the doorway. His clothes were dusty from travel, his hat weathered and stained with sweat, and his face bore the kind of tan that came from years under the unforgiving sun. But what struck her most were his eyes, a startling shade of green that seemed almost out of place against his sun-darkened skin. He looked exhausted, the kind of bone deep tired that suggested he had been riding for days. "Afternoon, miss," he said, his voice hoarse and rough. "I apologize for my appearance. I have been on the trail for near a week without much in the way of proper food. I was hoping you might have some bread to spare, and maybe some water if it is not too much trouble." Lily found herself momentarily speechless, which was unusual for her. She had dealt with countless customers over the years, from the gruff miners who barely spoke to the chatty ladies who came in for their weekly orders, but something about this stranger made her heart beat a little faster. "Of course," she managed, finding her voice. "Please, sit down. You look like you might fall over if you do not." The man offered a tired smile and removed his hat, revealing dark brown hair that curled slightly at the ends where sweat had dampened it. He moved to one of the small tables her father had set up near the window, lowering himself into the chair with a grateful sigh. Lily hurried to the back and filled a pitcher with cool water from the pump, then grabbed one of the few remaining good loaves from the morning batch. She hesitated, then made a decision that surprised even herself. She retrieved 2 of the burned loaves as well, wrapping them in a cloth napkin. When she returned to the front, the man was leaning back in his chair with his eyes closed, his face tilted toward the ceiling. He opened them when he heard her approach, and she saw genuine appreciation in his expression. "Here," she said, setting the pitcher and a glass before him. Drink slowly if you have not had water in a while." He nodded and poured himself a glass, drinking it down in steady gulps before refilling it. She watched his throat work, noticing the stubble along his jaw and the small scar near his left ear. When he had finished the second glass, he looked at her with those striking green eyes and smiled. "Thank you, miss. That is the best water I have tasted in my entire life, and I am not exaggerating." Lily found herself smiling back despite her earlier frustration. "You are welcome. I brought you some bread as well. I should warn you, though, I am afraid our quality today is not what it usually is." She unwrapped the cloth to reveal the good loaf alongside the two burned ones. The man looked at them without judgment, his expression unchanged. "That looks like a feast to me, miss. How much do I owe you?" This was the moment where Lily should have named a fair price, taken his money, and sent him on his way. Instead, she found herself saying something entirely different. "Nothing. You look like you need it more than we need the money right now." The man's eyebrows rose in surprise. "That is incredibly kind, but I cannot accept charity. I have money to pay, and I would like to." "It is not charity," Lily said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "Consider it a welcome to Wilcox. We take care of travelers here." The man studied her for a long moment, and Lily felt heat rise to her cheeks under his gaze. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Then I accept your generous welcome, and I thank you for it. My name is Parker Emerson, and I am very pleased to make your acquaintance, miss. Fairmont, Lily Fairmont. My father owns this bakery." Parker extended his hand across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, Lily took it. His grip was strong but gentle, his palm calloused from years of hard work. The handshake lasted perhaps a second longer than propriety suggested, and when they released, Lily felt a strange tingling in her fingers. "Well, Miss Fairmont, you have saved a starving man today, and I will not forget it." Parker took the good loaf first and tore off a piece, eating it with obvious relish. Lily knew she should return to the kitchen, but instead she found herself lingering, watching him eat. He had the manners of someone who had been raised properly, but had spent enough time on the frontier to forget some of the finer points of dining etiquette. He ate with purpose, clearly ravenous, but not so quickly as to be unpleasant to watch. When he had finished the good loaf, he reached for one of the burned ones. Lily felt compelled to warn him. "You really do not have to eat those. I burned them badly. They will taste terrible." Parker looked at the blackened bread and then back at her, that tired smile returning to his face. "Miss Fairmont, when you have gone days with nothing but jerky so tough it could sole a boot, even burned bread is a delicacy. Besides, it would be wasteful not to eat it, and I was raised to never waste food." He tore into the burned loaf with the same enthusiasm he had shown the good one. Lily watched in amazement as he chewed the charred bread without so much as a grimace. He ate every bite of both burned loaves, washing them down with more water, until nothing remained but crumbs. "That," Parker said, leaning back in his chair with a satisfied expression, "was exactly what I needed. Your baking skills are excellent, Miss Fairmont, burned or not." Lily laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise both of them. "You are either very kind or very hungry, Mr. Emerson. Those loaves were ruined, and we both know it." "Perhaps I am both," Parker admitted, his green eyes crinkling at the corners. "But I am sincere when I say that was the best meal I have had in a very long time. The company made it even better." The compliment, delivered so simply and honestly, made Lily's heart skip. She was not accustomed to such direct appreciation, especially not from handsome strangers who looked at her like she had just given them the world. The front door opened again, and Lily's father entered carrying an empty basket. Samuel Fairmont was a stocky man in his 50s, with gray hair and the permanently flour-dusted appearance of someone who had spent their entire life in a bakery. His eyes went immediately to Parker, then to Lily, his expression questioning. "Papa, this is Mr. Parker Emerson. He just arrived in town. Mr. Emerson, this is my father, Samuel Fairmont." Parker stood immediately, extending his hand to the older man. "Sir, it is a pleasure. Your daughter has been incredibly kind to a weary traveler." Samuel shook his hand, his grip firm despite his arthritis. "Any friend of my daughter's is welcome here, though I hope she charged you a fair price for that bread." Lily felt her cheeks flush again. "I gave him a welcome meal, Papa. He looked like he needed it." Her father's expression softened as he looked at Parker more carefully, taking in the signs of hard travel and exhaustion. "I see. Well, you are welcome indeed then, Mr. Emerson. Will you be staying in Wilcox long?" "I am not certain yet, sir. I am a ranch hand by trade, looking for work. I heard there might be opportunities in this area with the cattle operations expanding." Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "The Johnson Ranch, about 5 miles south of town, has been hiring. They have been growing their operation considerably. You might try there." "I will do that, thank you. I appreciate the advice." Parker settled his hat back on his head and moved toward the door, then paused and turned back to Lily. "Miss Fairmont, thank you again for your kindness. I hope I might be able to repay it someday." "There is nothing to repay," Lily said softly. "Safe travels, Mr. Emerson." She watched him leave, his tall frame disappearing into the bright afternoon sunlight. When she turned back, her father was looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. "That was very generous of you, Lily. I know I am sorry. I should have asked you first." Samuel waved a hand dismissively. "No, no, you did the right thing. That man looked like he had been through something difficult. Besides, I saw which loaves you gave him." "The burned ones from this afternoon's batch, yes." Lily nodded, feeling embarrassed all over again. "I am sorry about those too, Papa. I was not paying attention." Her father moved closer and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We all make mistakes, daughter. But it seems your mistake might have fed a man who truly needed it. Sometimes things work out in unexpected ways." The rest of the afternoon passed in its usual rhythm. Lily prepared dough for the next morning's baking, cleaned the ovens, and swept the floors while her father worked on the accounts in the small office at the back of the shop. But her mind kept wandering to Parker Emerson, to those green eyes and the way he had eaten every bite of that terrible bread without complaint. She told herself it was foolish to think about a stranger who would likely find work on a ranch and forget all about the baker's daughter who had given him a meal. Men like that, cowboys and drifters, they pass through towns like Wilcox all the time. There was no reason to believe she would ever see him again. But as she lay in bed that night in the small room above the bakery, listening to her father's soft snoring through the thin walls, she found herself hoping she was wrong. The next morning arrived with the same pre-dawn darkness that greeted Lily every day of her life. She dressed quickly in the cool air, braided her long brown hair, and made her way down to the bakery kitchen. Her father was already there, mixing the first batch of dough, his movements practiced and efficient despite the stiffness in his joints. They worked in comfortable silence, a routine they had perfected over the years. Lily shaped loaves while her father prepared the sweet rolls that were popular with the morning customers. By the time the sun started to paint the horizon pink and gold, the ovens were full, and the smell of fresh bread was beginning to fill the shop. The morning rush started around 6 o'clock when the miners came in before their shifts. Then came the shopkeepers opening their stores, the ranchers' wives doing their weekly shopping, and the occasional traveler passing through on the stage. Lily moved through it all with practiced ease, wrapping purchases, making change and exchanging pleasantries with the regular customers. She was helping Mrs. Martinez select rolls for her large family when the bell above the door chimed again. Lily glanced up automatically and felt her breath catch when she saw Parker Emerson entering the shop. He looked considerably better than he had the day before, cleaned up and rested, though he still wore the same well-worn clothes of a working cowboy. Their eyes met across the shop, and Parker smiled, that same genuine expression that had affected her so strongly yesterday. Mrs. Martinez noticed Lily's distraction and turned to see what had caught her attention, then gave Lily a knowing look that made her blush. "Good morning, Mr. Emerson," Lily said, trying to keep her voice steady and professional. "How can I help you today?" Parker approached the counter, removing his hat respectfully. "Good morning, Miss Fairmont. I was hoping to purchase some bread and perhaps some of those sweet rolls if you have any to spare. I got the job at the Johnson Ranch and I start work tomorrow. I wanted to stock up on provisions." "Congratulations on the position," Lily said, genuinely pleased. "I am glad Mr. Johnson is hiring. How many loaves did you need?" "3 should do, and half a dozen rolls if you can manage it." As Lily gathered his order, Mrs. Martinez excused herself with her purchases, giving Lily a meaningful wink that made her want to disappear into the floor. Parker either did not notice or was too polite to acknowledge it. "I wanted to thank you again for yesterday," Parker said as Lily wrapped his bread. "I thought about it all night at the boarding house. You did not have to be so kind, especially giving me food without payment. It meant a lot to a stranger far from home." "It was nothing, truly," Lily said, though her heart was beating faster. "Anyone would have done the same." "I do not think that is true, but I appreciate your modesty." Parker paused, seeming to gather his courage. "Miss Fairmont, I was wondering if you might allow me to repay your kindness by taking you to dinner sometime. There is a restaurant on Main Street that several people have recommended." Lily's hand stilled on the package she was wrapping. A dinner invitation from Parker Emerson was the last thing she had expected, though she realized now that she had been hoping for exactly this without admitting it to herself. "I would like that very much," she heard herself say. Parker's face lit up with a smile that transformed his entire appearance. "Truly, that is wonderful. Would tomorrow evening suit you? I know it is short notice, but I would like to take you out before I start the demanding schedule at the ranch. Tomorrow evening would be perfect." They made arrangements for him to call for her at 6 o'clock, and as Parker left the shop with his purchases, Lily found herself smiling so broadly that her father commented on it from the back room. "You seem in particularly good spirits this morning, daughter." "Mr. Emerson asked me to dinner tomorrow night. I said yes." Samuel emerged from the back room, wiping his hands on his apron. His expression was thoughtful rather than disapproving, which Lily took as a good sign. "He seems like a decent man from what I could tell. But be careful, Lily. Cowboys tend to be restless souls, always looking toward the next horizon. I do not want to see you hurt." "I know, Papa. It is just dinner. I am not planning our wedding." But even as she said it, Lily felt a flutter of excitement in her chest that suggested her heart might already be getting ahead of her common sense. The rest of the day passed with agonizing slowness. Lily found herself constantly aware of the clock, as if willing time to move faster to bring tomorrow evening closer. She burned another batch of bread in the afternoon, so distracted by thoughts of Parker that she forgot to check the ovens. Her father said nothing, just gave her a knowing look and helped her salvage what they could. That night, Lily lay awake for hours, alternating between excitement and anxiety. What would they talk about? What if she said something foolish? What if he realized that she was just a simple baker's daughter with flour perpetually under her fingernails, and nothing interesting to say? But she also remembered the way he had looked at her, the genuine warmth in his eyes, and the fact that he had eaten every bite of that terrible burned bread without a single complaint. That had to mean something. The next day crawled by with the same painful slowness. Lily was useless in the bakery, her mind so far away that her father finally sent her upstairs to prepare for her evening, shaking his head with fond exasperation. Lily bathed carefully, washing away the flour and sweat of the day. She had limited options for clothing. Most of her dresses were simple and practical, designed for working in the bakery. But she had one nice dress that her father had bought her last year for Christmas, a deep blue cotton with small white flowers embroidered around the collar and cuffs. It was the finest thing she owned, and she had worn it only a handful of times. She dressed carefully, her fingers trembling slightly as she fastened the buttons. She unpinned her hair and brushed it out, letting it fall in waves down her back before gathering it into a more sophisticated style, with a few loose curls framing her face. She had no rouge or powder, but she pinched her cheeks to bring color to them and bit her lips to make them redder. When she looked at herself in the small mirror, she barely recognized the young woman staring back. She looked older somehow, more grown up, and definitely more nervous. Parker arrived precisely at 6 o'clock, dressed in clothes that were clearly his best, clean pants and a shirt that looked newly pressed. His hair was damp and neatly combed, and he smelled faintly of soap. He held his hat in his hands and looked almost as nervous as Lily felt, which somehow made her feel better. Samuel answered the door and invited Parker in, subjecting him to a father's scrutiny while Lily finished pinning her hair. She could hear their voices drifting up the stairs, her father asking polite but pointed questions about Parker's background and intentions. By the time she came down, Parker looked slightly overwhelmed but was handling himself well. "You look beautiful, Miss Fairmont," Parker said when he saw her, his eyes widening with obvious admiration. "Thank you, Mr. Emerson. You look very handsome yourself." Samuel walked them to the door, giving Lily a quick kiss on the forehead and Parker a firm handshake and a meaningful look that needed no words to interpret. Then they were out in the evening air, the heat of the day finally breaking into something more comfortable. They walked side by side down the dusty street toward the restaurant, carefully maintaining a respectable distance between them. The town was busy with evening activity, people finishing their workdays and socializing before heading home. Lily was acutely aware of the glances they received, knowing that by morning everyone in Wilcox would know that Samuel Fairmont's daughter had gone to dinner with the new cowboy at the Johnson Ranch. The restaurant was a modest establishment called Murphy's Place, run by an Irish couple who had settled in Wilcox 5 years earlier. It had a reputation for good food and honest prices, which made it popular with locals and travelers alike. Parker held the door for her, and they were seated at a small table near the window by Mrs. Murphy herself, who gave Lily an encouraging smile. The menu was simple, offering steak, chicken, or fish with potatoes and vegetables. Parker ordered the steak, and Lily chose the chicken, both of them suddenly shy now that they were actually alone together. "I hope I did not get you in trouble with your father," Parker said after they had ordered. "He seems very protective of you." "He is, but he means well. I am all he has since my mother passed. He worries about me." "That is understandable. A father should protect his daughter." Parker paused, then added, "Your mother, was it recent?" "No, I was only 7 when she died. Influenza. It was a bad winter that year and many people in town got sick. My father and I survived it, but she did not. I am sorry. That must have been very difficult." "It was, but it was a long time ago. Papa did his best raising me alone. He taught me everything about baking, and he made sure I could read and write and do figures. Not every girl gets that opportunity. He sounds like a good man. He is. The best. Lily paused, then asked, "What about your family? Do you have people waiting for you somewhere?" A shadow passed over Parker's face, and Lily immediately regretted asking. "I am sorry, that was too personal a question." "No, it is fine. It is a fair thing to wonder about." Parker took a breath. "I had a family once, parents, a younger sister. We had a small farm in Missouri, but there was a fire 4 years ago. I was out checking the livestock when it started. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. I could not save them." The raw pain in his voice made Lily's heart ache. Without thinking, she reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "Parker, I am so sorry. That is terrible." He looked down at their joined hands, then turned his over so he could hold hers properly. "Thank you. It was the worst night of my life. I buried them on the farm, sold what was left, and started riding west. I could not stay there anymore, surrounded by memories and ghosts. I have been drifting ever since, taking work where I could find it, never staying anywhere too long. That must be lonely. It has been. But yesterday, when you showed me that kindness, it was the first time in a long while that I felt like maybe I could start to build a life again, instead of just surviving from one day to the next." Their food arrived, breaking the intensity of the moment, but Lily felt changed by his confession. She understood now why he had looked so lost when he first walked into the bakery, why her small gesture of kindness had meant so much to him. He was not just a drifter looking for work, but a man trying to outrun grief. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing more easily now that they had moved past the initial awkwardness. Parker told her about his travels, the places he had seen, the different ranches where he had worked. Lily shared stories about growing up in the bakery, the regular customers who had become like family, the challenges of running a small business in a frontier town. "You seem happy here," Parker observed. "But is baking what you want to do for the rest of your life?" It was a question Lily had been asking herself more and more lately. "I do not know," she admitted. "I love my father and I want to help him, but sometimes I wonder what else might be out there. I have lived my entire life in this town, in that bakery. I have never seen the ocean or the mountains, never been anywhere that was not within a day's ride of home. Would you want to? Travel, I mean, see other places. I think so. But I also know it is not practical. Papa needs me and the bakery is our livelihood." "Dreams are fine, but they do not pay the bills or put food on the table." Parker nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know what you mean. I have had my share of impractical dreams, too." "What were they?" "Your dreams," he smiled a bit sadly. "Before the fire, I wanted to expand the farm, maybe breed horses. I have always loved horses, the way they move, their spirit. I thought maybe I could build something lasting, something I could pass down to my own children someday." "That is a beautiful dream. Maybe you still could someday." "Maybe. Working at the Johnson Ranch could be a start. If I save my money, prove myself valuable, who knows what might be possible." They finished their meal and ordered coffee, neither of them ready for the evening to end. As they talked, Lily found herself increasingly drawn to Parker. He was thoughtful and kind, with a quiet strength that came from surviving real hardship. He listened when she spoke, asked genuine questions, and seemed genuinely interested in her answers. When they finally left the restaurant, the sun had set completely, and stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. They walked slowly back toward the bakery, both of them acutely aware that their time together was coming to an end. "I really enjoyed this evening, Lily," Parker said as they approached the bakery. He had started using her first name during dinner at her invitation, and she loved the way it sounded in his voice. I did too, Parker. Very much. They stopped in front of the bakery, facing each other in the dim light spilling from the windows. Parker still held his hat in his hands, turning it nervously. I start work tomorrow at dawn and the hours are long, but I would very much like to see you again if you would allow it. I would like that too. Sunday is my day off. Perhaps we could go for a ride. I could borrow horses from the ranch and I could show you some of the countryside if you would enjoy that. Lily's heart soared. That sounds wonderful. Parker smiled, that genuine expression that transformed his entire face. Then it is settled. I will call for you Sunday morning if that suits you. Perfect. They stood there for another moment, neither wanting to be the first to leave. Finally, Parker reached out and took her hand, raising it to his lips and kissing it gently. The gesture was old-fashioned and sweet, and it made Lily's heart race. Good night, Lily Fairmont. Thank you for a perfect evening. Good night, Parker Emerson. Thank you for dinner. She watched him walk away into the darkness, her hand still tingling where his lips had touched it. When she finally went inside, her father was waiting in the living room pretending to read a book. Did you have a nice time? He asked, looking at her over his spectacles. Yes, Papa. I had a wonderful time. He seems like a good man. Just promise me you will be careful with your heart, Lily. I could not bear to see you hurt. I promise, Papa. But as she climbed the stairs to her room, Lily wondered if it was already too late for that promise. Her heart was already invested, already hoping for things she had no right to hope for with a man she had just met. The days, until Sunday, stretched out like a sweet torture. Lily went through her routines at the bakery, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying conversations with Parker, imagining their upcoming ride together. She found herself humming while she worked, smiling at nothing, generally behaving like exactly what she was, a young woman falling in love. Her father noticed, of course, but he said nothing, just watched her with a mixture of happiness and concern that she pretended not to see. Sunday morning finally arrived, bright and clear. Lily dressed in her most practical dress, one that would be suitable for riding, and braided her hair securely. She had only been on a horse a handful of times in her life, and she was more nervous about making a fool of herself than she cared to admit. Parker arrived just after breakfast, leading 2 horses, a sturdy bay gelding and a gentle-looking mare with a white blaze on her face. He helped Lily into the saddle, his hands steady on her waist as he lifted her up, and the brief contact made her breath catch. "This is Daisy," he said, patting the mare's neck. "She is the gentlest horse on the ranch. She will take good care of you." They rode out of town, heading east, toward the foothills that rose in the distance. Parker kept their pace slow and easy, matching Lily's inexperienced riding. He pointed out landmarks, told her about the ranch and his work there, and seemed genuinely happy to be sharing this with her. "You are a natural," he said, watching her handle the reins. "Are you sure you have not been riding much?" "I am sure. I think Daisy deserves most of the credit. She seems to know I have no idea what I am doing." Parker laughed, and the sound filled Lily with warmth. She loved his laugh, the way it crinkled the corners of his eyes and made him look younger, less burdened by the grief he carried. They rode for over an hour, climbing gradually into the hills until they reached a spot where the land opened up to reveal a stunning view of the valley below. Wilcox looked tiny from this height, a small cluster of buildings surrounded by endless desert and scrubland. Parker dismounted and helped Lily down, his hands lingering on her waist perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "This is one of my favorite spots," he said. "I found it my second day working at the ranch. When things get difficult, I come up here and remind myself how big the world is, how much beauty there is in it." "It is breathtaking," Lily agreed, looking out at the vast landscape. "I have never seen it from up here before." It makes everything feel different, smaller somehow, but also more special. They sat on a flat rock, their shoulders almost touching, and shared the lunch Lily had packed: bread, cheese, apples, and cold chicken. They talked easily, the conversation flowing between comfortable silences and animated discussions. "Can I ask you something?" Lily said after a while. "Anything. Why did you eat all of that burned bread that first day when you came into the bakery? You could have just eaten the good loaf and left the rest. Nobody would have blamed you." Parker was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Honestly, it was because of how you looked when you gave it to me. You were embarrassed, I could tell, but you were also so kind and generous despite having made a mistake. It reminded me of my mother. She used to burn things all the time when she was distracted, and my father would eat every bite and tell her it was delicious. I asked him once why he did it, and he said it was because love means appreciating someone's efforts even when they are not perfect, maybe especially when they are not perfect." Lily felt tears prick at her eyes. "That is beautiful. He was a good man, my father. He loved my mother with his whole heart, and she loved him the same way. I always hoped I would find something like that someday." "Is that what you are looking for? That kind of love?" Parker turned to look at her, his green eyes intense and sincere. "I think I might have found it already." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Lily could hear her heart pounding in her ears, could feel the warmth of the sun on her skin, and the solid presence of Parker beside her. She knew she should be cautious, should protect her heart like her father had warned her, but she could not seem to make herself care about being sensible. "Parker," she whispered. He reached out and cupped her face gently, his calloused thumb brushing across her cheek. "Lily, I know it has only been a few days, and maybe I am crazy for feeling this way so quickly, but I cannot help it. From the moment you showed me kindness in that bakery, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. About your smile, your laugh, the way you care so deeply about things. I am falling in love with you, and I know that probably terrifies you, and I am sorry if it is too much too soon, but I have learned that life is too short not to be honest about how you feel." Lily felt like her heart might burst. "It does not terrify me, or maybe it does, but in a good way. Because I am falling in love with you too, Parker. I have been trying to be sensible and practical, but my heart does not seem to care about being sensible." Parker's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face with pure joy. "Really, you mean it?" "I mean it." He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet, his lips warm against hers, and Lily felt like fireworks were exploding in her chest. Her first kiss, and it was everything she had ever imagined and more. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling so broadly it almost hurt. "I have wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," Parker admitted. "I have wanted you to do it since then too," Lily confessed, feeling bold and giddy. They spent the rest of the afternoon in that beautiful spot, talking and kissing and making plans for the future that felt both impossible and absolutely right. Parker told her about his dream of someday having his own ranch, breeding horses and building something lasting. Lily shared her own quiet dreams of seeing more of the world, of doing something beyond just baking bread every day. "Maybe we could do it together," Parker said, holding her hand and tracing patterns on her palm with his finger. "Build a life that includes both our dreams." "Maybe we could," Lily agreed, letting herself believe in possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider before. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, they reluctantly made their way back down the mountain. The ride home was filled with comfortable silence and frequent smiles, both of them wrapped in the warm glow of new love. When they reached the bakery, Parker helped Lily dismount and walked her to the door. Can I see you again tomorrow after work? I could come by the bakery. I would like that. Come for dinner. My father will not mind, and I make a decent stew when I am not distracted and burning things. Parker laughed and kissed her again, quick and sweet, before mounting his horse. I will count the hours. Lily watched him ride away, her heart so full she thought it might overflow. She went inside to find her father waiting, as she had known he would be. I love him, Papa, she said simply. I know it is fast, and I know you are worried, but I love him. Samuel looked at his daughter for a long moment, seeing the joy radiating from her face, the happiness that had been missing from her eyes for so long. I can see that. And I think he loves you too, if the way he looked at you this morning was any indication. Just promise me you will be happy, Lily. That is all I have ever wanted for you. I promise. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Parker came to the bakery almost every day after work, staying for dinner and spending the evenings talking with Lily and her father. Samuel grew to genuinely like the young cowboy, appreciating his work ethic, his honesty, and most of all, the way he looked at Lily like she was the most precious thing in the world. Parker was true to his word about his feelings. He courted Lily properly, with flowers when he could afford them, with small gifts he made himself, with attention and affection that never wavered. He told her he loved her regularly, and she never tired of hearing it or of saying it back. On Sundays, they continued their tradition of riding out into the countryside, exploring new places and dreaming about their future together. Parker was saving every penny he earned, working extra hours when he could, determined to build a nest egg that would allow him to start his own small operation someday. Mr. Johnson said if I prove myself for a year, he might be willing to sell me a section of his land on credit, Parker told Lily one Sunday as they sat by a creek, cooling their feet in the water. It is not much, maybe 40 acres, but it would be a start. Enough to run some cattle, breed a few horses. That sounds wonderful, Lily said, squeezing his hand. You would be so good at that. We would be good at it, Parker corrected. That is, if you would consider being part of it, part of my life permanently. Lily's heart began to race. Parker, what are you saying? He shifted to face her more fully, taking both her hands in his. I am saying this all wrong. I have been planning this for days, and now that the moment is here, I am tongue-tied. He took a deep breath and started again. Lily, I know we have only known each other for a few months, but they have been the happiest months of my life. You make me want to be better, to build something lasting, to have a future worth living. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple gold band with a tiny diamond set in it. It is not much, I know, but it is the best I could afford right now. Lily Fairmont, would you do me the incredible honor of becoming my wife? Tears were streaming down Lily's face, but she was smiling so broadly her cheeks hurt. Yes, yes, of course I will marry you. Parker slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made just for her. Then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, both of them laughing and crying at the same time with pure joy. When they finally pulled apart, Parker rested his forehead against hers. I promise I will spend the rest of my life making you happy. You already make me happy. More happy than I ever imagined I could be. They stayed by the creek until sunset, making plans and dreaming together. They would wait a few months to get married, saving more money and giving Parker time to finalize the land deal with Mr. Johnson. Lily would continue working at the bakery until the wedding, and her father had already promised to help them get started on their new ranch. Breaking the news to Samuel was easier than Lily had expected. He had clearly seen this coming and welcomed Parker into the family with genuine warmth. I knew from the first time I saw you two together that this would happen, he said, embracing Parker. Welcome to the family, son. The wedding took place on a beautiful October morning at the small church in Wilcox. Lily wore a simple white dress that she and Mrs. Martinez had sewn together, with wildflowers in her hair that Parker had picked himself that morning. Parker wore his best suit, looking handsome and nervous as he waited at the altar. The ceremony was small and intimate, attended by the townspeople who had become family over the years. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Parker kissed her for the first time as her husband, Lily felt like her heart might burst with happiness. The reception was held at the bakery, with food that Samuel had spent days preparing. There was music and dancing, laughter and joy, and countless toasts to the happy couple. As Lily danced with her new husband, looking into his green eyes that still took her breath away, she marveled at how much her life had changed since that hot July afternoon when she had burned a batch of bread. "What are you thinking about?" Parker asked, spinning her gently. "About how grateful I am that I burned that bread. If I had not, you might have just bought a regular loaf and left, and we might never have really talked." Parker laughed and pulled her closer. "Then I am grateful for your distraction too. Though I would have found a way to talk to you regardless. Some things are just meant to be." "Do you really believe that? That we were meant to be?" "I do. I think I have been looking for you my whole life, Lily. I just did not know it until I walked into that bakery." They moved into a small house on the property that Parker had bought from Mr. Johnson. It was not much, just 3 rooms and a porch, but it was theirs. Parker continued working for Johnson while slowly building up their own herd, and Lily helped her father at the bakery during the day while learning to manage their new home. The first year of marriage was not always easy. Money was tight, the work was hard, and there were times when they both wondered if they had taken on too much too fast. But through it all, they had each other. Parker would come home exhausted from a long day of ranch work, and Lily would have dinner waiting. They would sit on their porch in the evenings, watching the sun set and talking about their day, and those moments made everything worthwhile. Lily discovered she was pregnant in the spring, and Parker's joy was boundless. He became even more protective of her, insisting she work less at the bakery and rest more. Samuel was thrilled at the prospect of becoming a grandfather and immediately began making plans to expand his involvement in the bakery so Lily could focus on the baby. Their son was born on a warm September evening, delivered by the town doctor with Parker holding Lily's hand the entire time. They named him Thomas Samuel Emerson, after Parker's father and Lily's. He was perfect, with Parker's green eyes and Lily's brown hair, and from the moment Lily held him, she knew what true love really meant. Parker was a devoted father, spending every spare moment with Thomas, teaching him about horses and cattle as soon as he was old enough to walk. Lily watched her husband with their son and fell in love with him all over again, seeing the gentle patience he showed, the way he made every moment a lesson and an adventure. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter they named Rose Marie. She had her mother's brown eyes and her father's easy smile, and she wrapped everyone around her little finger from day one. Samuel doted on his grandchildren, spending hours baking special treats for them and telling them stories about their mother when she was young. The ranch grew slowly but steadily. Parker's skill with horses became known throughout the region, and people began seeking him out specifically to train their animals. Within 5 years of their wedding, they had paid off their land and were able to buy an additional 20 acres. It was not the vast empire Parker had once dreamed of, but it was theirs, built with their own hands and sustained by their love. Lily never returned to working at the bakery full-time, but she often helped her father during busy seasons, and she taught both Thomas and Rose how to bake bread. There was something special about passing on those skills, about continuing the family tradition even as she built a new life. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Parker surprised Lily with a trip. He had saved secretly for 2 years, and he took her on the train all the way to California to see the ocean, something she had dreamed about since she was a little girl. They left the children with Samuel and spent a week exploring San Francisco, walking on the beach and marveling at the vastness of the Pacific. "Thank you for this," Lily said as they stood on the shore, waves lapping at their feet, "for remembering my dreams and making them come true." "Thank you for giving me a reason to dream again," Parker replied, pulling her close. "Thank you for that day in the bakery when you chose kindness over practicality. Thank you for loving me even when I ate that terrible burned bread." Lily laughed, the same genuine sound that Parker had fallen in love with all those years ago. "It really was terrible bread, was it not? The worst I have ever eaten. And I loved every bite because you gave it to me." They returned home to find that Thomas had managed to lose one of their calves, and Rose had somehow gotten herself stuck in a tree, typical chaos for their household. Samuel had managed everything just fine, but he admitted to being exhausted and happy to return the children to their parents. Life continued its beautiful, messy, wonderful rhythm. There were hard years when drought threatened their livelihood, and there were abundant years when they were able to expand and thrive. There were sleepless nights with sick children and joyful mornings filled with laughter. Through it all, Parker and Lily faced everything together, their love deepening with each passing year. When Thomas was 15 and Rose was 13, Samuel Fairmont passed away peacefully in his sleep. It was a devastating loss for the entire family, but especially for Lily. Her father had been her rock, her teacher, her constant support through everything. They buried him next to Lily's mother in the town cemetery, and Parker held Lily as she wept for the man who had raised her and loved her so well. The bakery passed to Lily, and after much discussion, they decided to keep it running. Rose, who had inherited her grandfather's talent for baking, began working there after school, learning the trade just as Lily had. It felt right, continuing the legacy that Samuel had built. Thomas grew into a fine young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. He had Parker's way with horses and his mother's practical wisdom, and he began taking on more responsibility as he got older. Parker often joked that he was working himself out of a job, but his pride in his son was evident in everything he said and did. Rose eventually took over the bakery completely, modernizing it while maintaining the quality and care that had made it a Wilcox institution. She married a doctor who set up practice in town, and they gave Lily and Parker 4 grandchildren who were the lights of their lives. Thomas took over the ranch when Parker decided it was time to step back from the hard daily labor. He married a schoolteacher from Phoenix, and they added onto the house, expanding it to accommodate the growing family. Parker loved having a full house, loved the noise and chaos of grandchildren running around, so different from the lonely years after his own family had died. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Parker and Lily sat on their porch watching the sunset, just as they had done countless times over the years. Their hair was graying now, their faces lined with the years, but when they looked at each other, they saw the same young people who had fallen in love over burned bread and kind gestures. "You ever regret it?" Lily asked, holding Parker's hand. "Staying in one place instead of drifting? Building this life instead of seeing more of the world?" Parker turned to her with that same smile that still made her heart skip. "Not for a single moment. Every good thing in my life started the day I walked into your father's bakery. You gave me a home when I had none, a family when I thought I had lost that forever, a reason to build instead of just survive. How could I possibly regret any of that? I love you," Lily said, the words as true as they had been the first time she said them all those years ago. I love you too. More every day, which I did not think was possible, but somehow it keeps happening. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky paint itself in brilliant colors, surrounded by the sounds of their family inside the house. Thomas and his wife were cooking dinner, their children playing and laughing. Rose and her family would arrive soon for the anniversary celebration. The ranch was thriving, the bakery was successful, and most importantly, they had built a life filled with love and purpose. Lily thought back to that hot July afternoon when she had burned a batch of bread in her distraction. At the time, it had seemed like just another mistake, another thing to be embarrassed about. But it had brought Parker into her life, had started a chain of events that led to everything beautiful she now possessed. "What are you smiling about?" Parker asked, noticing her expression. "Just thinking about how perfect our life turned out. How grateful I am for every moment, even the hard ones. Even the burned bread, especially the burned bread." Parker laughed and kissed her temple, pulling her close against his side. To burned bread and second chances. To kindness and Cowboy who was hungry enough to eat anything. To love that starts in unexpected moments and lasts a lifetime. They sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the first stars began to appear, surrounded by the life they had built together, secure in a love that had been tested by time and found unshakable. It was not the life either of them had imagined when they were young, but it was better than anything they could have dreamed. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Parker and Lily grew old together gracefully, their love a foundation that supported not just them but their entire family. They became the matriarch and patriarch of a clan that included children, grandchildren, and eventually great-grandchildren. When they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, the whole town turned out for the party that Rose organized at the bakery. There were speeches and toasts, stories and laughter, and through it all, Parker never let go of Lily's hand. 50 years, he marveled when they had a quiet moment alone. It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all. I know exactly what you mean, Lily agreed. Sometimes I still feel like that young girl who burned the bread and met a handsome stranger. Other times I look at our grandchildren and cannot believe how much life we have lived. You know what I think about sometimes? Parker asked. I think about how close I came to never meeting you. If I had stopped at a different town, if I had arrived a day earlier or later, if you had not been distracted and burned that bread. So many tiny moments that could have changed everything. But they did not. We found each other. We did. And I have spent 50 years being grateful for it. As they aged, their roles in the family shifted. Thomas ran the ranch with skill and dedication, often consulting his father but clearly his own man. Rose's bakery had become a Wilcox landmark, featured in regional newspapers and attracting customers from surrounding towns. Their grandchildren were growing up, starting their own lives, and the cycle of family continued. Parker's health began to decline when he was in his early 70s. Years of hard ranch work had taken their toll on his body, and his joints ached in the cold. But his spirit remained strong, and his love for Lily never wavered. On days when he felt well, they still sat on the porch together, watching the sunsets and remembering. Lily remained healthy and active, helping at the bakery when Rose needed her and doting on her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But she never strayed far from Parker, always aware of his needs, always ready with a gentle touch or encouraging word. They celebrated their 60th anniversary quietly, just family gathering at the ranch for a simple dinner. Parker was frailer now, moving slowly, but his eyes still lit up when he looked at Lily. 60 years of putting up with me, he joked weakly. "You deserve a medal." 60 years of loving you has been my greatest joy, Lily corrected, kissing his forehead. "I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Even the burned bread, especially the burned bread." It became their private joke, their shared memory that encompassed everything they meant to each other. Whenever things got difficult, whenever life threw challenges their way, one of them would mention the burned bread, and they would both smile, remembering how it all began. Parker passed away peacefully on a spring morning, with Lily holding his hand and their family surrounding his bed. His last words were, "I love you," directed at Lily with his final breath. She held him as he slipped away, her heart breaking even as she felt grateful that he went peacefully, surrounded by love. The funeral was attended by what seemed like the entire county. Parker Emerson had touched many lives in his 75 years, and people came from miles around to pay their respects. Story after story emerged of his kindness, his integrity, his skill with horses, and most of all, his obvious devotion to his wife and family. Lily mourned deeply, but not hopelessly. She had been blessed with 61 years of marriage to a man who loved her completely, and she had no regrets. The house felt empty without him, the porch lonely when she sat there alone, but she was surrounded by the evidence of their love in the form of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She continued to live at the ranch, refusing to move despite her family's concerns. This was the home she and Parker had built together, and she was not ready to leave it. She spent her days helping where she could, sharing stories with the younger generations, and sitting on the porch remembering. One afternoon, about a year after Parker's death, Lily's youngest great-granddaughter found her on the porch and climbed into her lap. "Grammy Lily, tell me how you met great-grandpa Parker." Lily smiled and began the story she had told countless times before, but it never got old. "Well, sweetheart, it all started with some very badly burned bread." She told the girl about that hot July afternoon, about the handsome, hungry cowboy who walked into the bakery, about his kindness in eating every bite of that terrible bread. She told her about falling in love, about building a life together, about all the joys and challenges they had faced. "So he ate burned bread and married you?" the little girl asked, her eyes wide. "He did. Because sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected moments. Sometimes a mistake leads to something wonderful, and sometimes all it takes is a little kindness to change everything." Lily lived for another 5 years, surrounded by family and love, secure in the knowledge that the life she and Parker had built would continue long after she was gone. When she passed away at the age of 84, she went peacefully in her sleep, and those who found her said she had a smile on her face, as if she was seeing something wonderful. They buried her next to Parker under the big oak tree on the ranch, where they could look out over the land they had built together. The headstone reads simply, "Lily Fairmont Emerson, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she made the bread that started it all." The bakery continued under Rose's children, maintaining the quality and care that had been Samuel Fairmont's legacy. The ranch thrived under Thomas's grandchildren, who bred horses just as Parker had always dreamed. And throughout the family, the story of the burned bread was told and retold, a reminder that love can start in the most unexpected ways, and that kindness is never wasted. In the bakery, they kept one of Parker's favorite sayings painted on the wall. "Love means appreciating someone's efforts even when they are not perfect, maybe especially when they are not perfect." It became a motto for the business and for the family, a reminder of the values that Parker and Lily had lived by. Years turned into decades, and the Emerson family grew and prospered, spreading across Arizona and beyond. But they always came back to Wilcox, to the bakery and the ranch where it all started. They gathered for anniversaries and holidays, for births and weddings, and always, someone would tell the story of the burned bread. The tale became part of Wilcox's history too, a local legend about the baker's daughter and the hungry cowboy, about love that started with a simple act of kindness and lasted beyond a lifetime. Visitors to the bakery would hear the story and smile, often buying extra bread just to be part of the tradition. The bench where Parker and Lily used to sit on their porch was preserved and moved to the front of the property, with a small plaque that read, "Here sat Parker and Lily Emerson, who proved that the best things in life are built on love, patience, and occasionally burned bread." Their love story became the kind that people aspired to, a real example of how a life could be built on mutual respect, genuine affection, and unwavering commitment. Young couples would visit their graves on their wedding days, leaving flowers and hoping for a fraction of the happiness that Parker and Lily had shared. The bakery eventually installed a small museum section with photos of Samuel, Lily, and Parker, along with some of their original baking tools and equipment. The centerpiece was a framed note in Lily's handwriting that read, "Recipe for a happy life. Take 1 batch of burned bread, add 1 hungry cowboy, mix with kindness and patience, bake with love for 61 years. Serves a lifetime." The ranch became known not just for its quality horses, but for the family values that guided its operation. Employees were treated like family, hard work was rewarded, and integrity was never compromised. People said that Parker Emerson's spirit still guided the place, that you could feel the love he and Lily had built into every fence post and every barn board. On quiet evenings when the wind blew just right across the Arizona desert, some family members swore they could hear laughter coming from the porch, the sound of 2 people in love enjoying another sunset together. Whether it was imagination or something more, it did not matter. The love that Parker and Lily had shared was so strong, so true, that it had become part of the land itself, woven into the very fabric of the place they had called home. Their story was taught to each new generation, not just as family history, but as a lesson in what really matters in life. It was not about wealth or fame or great adventures, though Parker and Lily had certainly had their share of excitement. It was about showing up for each other every day, about building something lasting through patience and dedication, about never taking for granted the gift of another person's love. The burned bread became a symbol, a reminder that perfection was not required for love to flourish. In fact, sometimes it was the imperfections, the mistakes, the vulnerable moments that created the strongest bonds. Lily had been embarrassed by her burned bread, but it had brought Parker into her life. That mistake had been the beginning of everything beautiful. As the years stretched into the future, and the Emerson family tree grew ever larger and more complex, the core of Parker and Lily's love remained constant. It was referenced in wedding toasts, quoted in anniversary cards, and held up as proof that true love really did exist, that it was possible to build a life of happiness and meaning with the right person by your side. The bakery still made bread every day, and occasionally, someone would deliberately burn a loaf, just for tradition's sake. These loaves were given away for free to travelers passing through town, continuing Lily's legacy of kindness to strangers. And who knows how many other love stories might have started with that simple gesture, that echo of the kindness that had changed everything so long ago. In the end, Parker and Lily's story was about more than just 2 people falling in love. It was about the ripple effects of kindness, about how one generous gesture could change the course of multiple lives. It was about the courage to love despite loss, to build despite uncertainty, to hope despite fear. It was about recognizing that the most extraordinary things often start with the most ordinary moments, like a hungry cowboy walking into a bakery on a hot summer afternoon. Their love had been tested by time and found unbreakable. It had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs. It had created a family legacy that would continue for generations, touching lives and inspiring hearts long after both Parker and Lily had left this world. And it had all started with burned bread, a kind heart, and two people brave enough to believe in possibilities. The story of Parker Emerson and Lily Fairmont proved that love does not require perfect circumstances or ideal timing. It just requires two people willing to see the best in each other, to work together toward common dreams, and to never give up even when things get difficult. Their love was built on a foundation of mutual respect, genuine affection, shared values, and the kind of deep commitment that does not waver with time or circumstance. And so the story continued, passed down through generations, always ending the same way, with the reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected moments, and that a little kindness shown to a stranger might just change everything. The baker's daughter burned the bread, the hungry cowboy ate every bite, and their love became the stuff of legend, proving that happily ever after was not just a fairy tale but something real people could build together, one day at a time, one kind gesture at a time, one choice to love unconditionally at a time.